Welcome to the Nerdlore podcast, where we talk stories, theories, and lore. Today's topic will be Dungeons and Dragons, and I will be the first to go with an interesting D&D story. All right, none of that. So
I thought you were gonna do the whole thing.
Yeah, that would have been great.
I was excited. I was excited.
You'd have been so tired afterwards.
I would have been. Really, as soon as I get through my whole story, just you guys talk, man. This hurts. So my first actual campaign dedicated with a party of like 5 people went through like 3 cycles of people coming in and out. Like I was the only remaining person from the original party. So we got 4 new people and we were trying to build like an RP session. So our characters be like, oh, let's go adventuring together. So of course our inclinations brought us to the tavern, and my character was like not vegetarian, but like closer to how people perceive Native Americans, where they eat like every part of whatever animal they're raising. And he raised really good dairy cows. So I was drinking a White Russian, and I like made a deal with the bartender to like mix White Russians for me. So I get a whole jug of White Russian made with, the cream from my cows. And one of the new people in our party was like, what is that? It tastes delicious. It's like ice cream. And I told him that it was alcohol and milk, because it's kind of what a White Russian is. And so he goes up to the bar. He looks at the bartender dead in the eye. He says, I want a beer and a glass of milk, please. Proceeds to pour them together. And this whole time we are cringing, physically cringing at this man describing his milk beer. Milk beer. I'm not a fan of that concept. I never want to go back to that tavern, and I'm quite frankly very disgusted.
Get that. That sounds...
Your roommate's poking his head in behind you. You want to see if he needs something?
Do you need something, Jacob?
I heard milk beer.
No, not milk beer.
Yeah.
In one of my games?
Yeah, that was when Tristan was trying to make a milk beer because he didn't know what a White Russian was.
I thought that sounded familiar. I was like, oh dear God, was that Tristan?
That was Tristan.
I like it. It's real life. Everybody was there for it.
Disgusting.
That's the post-video confirmation. we're recording right now. I'll catch up with you in like 4
Have fun.
So, like when I think back of all the D&D experiences, my group that I play with, they usually make me DM a lot because they're like, hey, you know the rules, you go through all of it. I very rarely get to like actually play as a player. They've let me do it about 2 times. And both times after like 6 or 7 sessions, it's kind of fallen apart and it comes back to, hey, let's Shiny Shoes DM again. My favorite one was I played a monk, and they were like, hey, what is your monk about? And he was like just kind of a jolly guy, literally lived to fight. That's what he liked to do. He just wanted to just become the best monk there was just by beating everything into the ground. So we go to like this village, and the DM, he's like, you come across this creepy village and everything's run down. Everything looks bedragon. And I was like, is that a word? And he's like,
it looks bedragon?
Yeah, bedrudgeon. He said something like that. Bedrudgeon. And I was like, okay. And then I go, and then we meet up with the big bad there, and he's like, you come to my Bedrudgeon town, and the DM wanted to use this big word, because he was like, hey, I looked this up, we found it. He's like, you come to my town, you do all this. What do you think is making you gonna get away with this? And I, straight-faced, I looked at the DM, I said, you know what? My character looks at your guy and says, hey, later on, I'm gonna be dragging my balls across your face as we go. Everybody at the table just started busting up laughing. And the DM looks at me straight face like, this is why nobody lets you play. You don't take anything seriously. I was like, what? That's how my character would act. That's the kind of things he likes to do. And he's like, no, you can't say that to the big bad guy. And he was like, that's it. You guys, he attacks you. And I was like, okay. And then, the battle ensues. And the DM, like, you could tell he's trying to fight my character. The problem is the way that he made this bad guy was he's very spell oriented. Well, we had a paladin in the group, and the paladins can create an anti-magic circle. So literally, we got close to him, got inside the 10-foot anti-magic circle, and I spent every turn tripping him, and then when he'd get up, I'd punch him. Because you get an attack of opportunity. And then he'd get back up, and then I'd take my turn, and I'd trip him and punch him again. And the DM's like, no, we're done. We're done. We're done. We're over this. And I was just like...
That is the most rude and awesome way I've ever heard someone take care of a big, bad, evil guy.
Yeah, like...
Tripping and then punching him.
Because that's... If you look at monk feats, like, you can literally build your monk to be really good at tripping people. And then you get bonus attacks when that individual tries to stand up based upon one of your modifiers. So it was just like, okay, trip. Your turn.
You actually school bullied the big bad evil guy. You're like, give me your beer milk money.
You're on the ground now. What are you gonna do? And like so all the rest of the players, they just got in this circle as well. And every time he tried to get up, every one of them would just punch him. And they're just like, this is the dumbest way I've ever killed someone. I was like, hey, I'll be dragging. You know what I'm saying.
I'll be drudging.
I'll be dredging. I still don't know what the word means, but I know that
but it sounds good.
That table was cracking up when I said that. So I'll never forget that. And that's probably still why they don't let me play as a character anymore, because of stupid stuff like that. But that was one of mine.
Okay, so I do have to admit I am not experienced at all in D&D, but I did play a MUD that was pretty closely based on it. A lot of the skills and spells and stuff were the same, so they all all damage modifiers were done by D8s or D10s, and I mean it was all based on D&D. So I am a huge fan of Dark Elves. I don't know what it is about the Drow that like draw me to them, but I love playing them.
Resistance to fire, probably. That helps.
Nah, it's not even about combat. It's just I just like them. They're like my favorite race. I can't explain it. So I played a female blade master that was a dark elf, and so she was just basically what all this means is that she does certain dances that do buffs based on like how if you do like Dance of the Willow, it would allow you to dodge and parry more. Like it was like there's certain buffs you get as anyway. So there was this giant berserker, which is another warrior, but it's based on like just pure aggression. Like you jump in, you do a lot of damage, but you can't ever flee because you're a berserker. So because like I was still kind of not really new, but I knew where some things were to the game. But anyway, so this giant was killing everybody because it was a PK server, so you could kill each other and take their gear. Like you could lose all of your gear. It wasn't like you rezzed and had all your gear and stuff back. But so he was killing everybody at this certain rank. So I finally hit this rank, and so just to be prepared, I go and grab 2 Psy swords because giants are vulnerable to mental. So I go into the guild hall because we share the same guild because we're still warriors. And this guy starts talking to me, and I'm kind of rude to him because first of all, I'm a female drow, and we're the kings of everything. Like even drow males are below us. Like the drow female was like so worshipped. So anyway, and he got mad, and so he attacked. But because I had the certain dances and because I had his vulnerability on my weapons, I'm way faster than he is because I'm also a drow, so my dexterity is so he couldn't hit me, and I just counter struck all of his like heavy hitting aggression things. And like I was excited because I killed him because I was never really good at PKing, but it was just the way that fight, because I kept fleeing and coming back, and he was berserker rage, so he'd immediately attack me if I came back into the room. So if I would flee and come back and counter, flee and come back and counter, flee and come back, and I killed him that way. And then an immortal pulled me into the realm of the dead, which is like this realm where it's like a room that you can't get to unless an immortal who like codes the game brings you there. So I was like, I looked, because you've been transported to the realm of the dead. You arrive in a puff of smoke, right? So like, I'm sitting there, and there's 3 like level 60 gods, which are like they were like the implementers of the game. Like they're the ones who wrote the game, and they were like, congratulations. And I was like, what? They were like, this person that you killed is a known hacker and has been hacking the system and killing everybody, and we can't track him down. So we told him when we finally found him that he could play until somebody killed him. So I ended
Oh,
up,
that's awesome.
yes. So I killed him, and it was it was great. That whole entire experience was just that was what I loved about that game so much, is you could have experiences like that were just on the fly, and you never forget them,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, uh, muds, not that muds aren't successful, but they're not nearly as big of a deal as they used to be, and so uh, last year they closed down Dark Mists, and I was very sad. Uh, it went strong for 27 years or something like that. So yeah, like it was fun, and I'll never forget those memories. But yeah, so I, even though I didn't play D&D, I still like to consider that
Oh yeah.
close.
I mean, I think that's one of probably like the best things about D&D is like it creates so many of those you had to be there moments. It was amazing. Like you'll tell somebody something, you'll be cracking up, and they'll be like, "Why is this person even laughing?" But when you were there, they're like, "This is the most amazing thing I've ever done." But
Right.
we're just not there. You got Sean?
I was about to say, I like how my story was like, oh, haha, this guy doesn't know what this is in game, but we're drinking. And your story, Shiny, was about bullying someone. And then Skandle bullied his way into meeting gods. So that's cool.
You don't usually meet God in a game, but you did. I like that.
Way to make me feel like I set the bar low.
Well, that's why I didn't want to go first, Sean.
Yeah, of course.
I thought the milk story was good. It made me laugh. So I thought it was
I
good.
put it right on the fridge. You did so good.
3 gold stars. I'll take it.
So for my question, is there a specific class or race, or is there something almost like it's almost always a go-to, and you find yourself having to, if you want a different experience, it's tough to go away from that class or that race or whatever? Is there like a specific thing that you just like better than everything else? Like, are you fond of spell casting? Are you fond of meleeing? Are you fond of healing? Like that's the question I'm asking.
I got mine.
I
was born ready.
I'll go after Sean.
Okay. I will go. So my favorite and always go-to class for Dungeons and Dragons is cleric. If I'm first playing the game, I'm a cleric. The reason for that is because out of all of the different classes and whatever reasons they would be for, like, I really like crafting stories for a character. Like I like to make them unusual, but for clerics, like the motivations are always so clear cut, and then you can like supersede your own expectations by being like, I am the server of the cheese god, and my one wish is to bring all the dairy cows all the happiness. That's it. You just be stupid like that. That's my favorite.
Everybody's in the
worship
tavern for the
everyone.
night, and you're like out in the barn, like, who's a good cow? Yours a good. Yes, you are.
Hey, listen, I can't afford my room, but I do have an incredible affinity for cheese.
Yeah.
I carry lots of different cheese with me.
Did you say Gouda? I've got it.
Hopefully this is considered currency, and I may sleep in your bed. Not your bed, but the inn's bed.
Listen,
Some bed. I just need to sleep. I don't care where it is.
if you got enough cheese, you're more than welcome in my bed. Every time. Guaranteed.
I'm not sure if lying or if that's like a fetish of yours. I like to bring cheese into the bedroom.
Who
Just
doesn't?
imagine Shiny at the grocery store walking past Century.
He's blushing and nobody knows why.
Did you say provolone? No. I like the cleric. Like when people tell me they don't know what to play, I always say play a cleric. And they're like,
Yeah.
why would I play cleric? I'm like, literally, they're one of the most useful persons in the party. They're heal bot. Everybody's gonna rely on you, and you get to make a lot of the party's decisions because they're like, they come to you for that healing. You become a natural leader for the group. And a lot of times, like, well, okay. And then they'll play cleric and they're like, you're right. People ask me, what do you think I should do? And I'm like, why do you think they ask you that? because I'm the only one that can heal them. Like, yeah, that's right. So I think I do have an affinity for playing monk because I just think the class is silly. Like, everybody else is out there with like all these crazy weapons and stuff like that, and you're like on a battlefield fighting ghosts with your fist. And they're like,
It is a really good monk feat whenever
Yeah.
it's like level 6 and you're like, you can now punch ghosts.
yeah. So like I think it's just silly, and you can like I always try to make my character into some kind of avatar person, like firebender, waterbender, and then like being a DM, you learn all these like broken synergies with the monks and stuff like that. Like if you build a sylph monk, and then you take the class feature elemental, where you're attuned to electricity, and then you go into the monk trait where you have like electricity going through you, your attacks can heal you. Same thing if you become like a wizard. There's a small jolt spell that's a 0 level cantrip that you can just continuously cast on yourself to heal. And usually like DMs will overlook that stuff, and you're like, okay, I'm here to play. I'm a sylph wizard with attunement to electricity. Here's my spell book, and they won't think anything of it. And then you're in your first fight and everybody's getting tanked. You're like, okay, I'm gonna zap myself. You roll your dice like, I heal for 2. I'm like, what? Yeah, it's a 0, and you have to explain all that. So I think monk's fun, but anything really that you can use elements.
Shiny just wants to be the avatar.
I am
So
the
badly.
avatar. Like you
So
guys
badly.
got the hair kind of ready to lose all of
It
it.
does kind of look like an arrow.
Yeah, I'm
No,
ready
a little
to lose
bit,
it all
yeah.
and just kind of float above my bed. But yeah, that's where I think I kind of fall into is just monk's probably one of the most fun for me, just because it is silly, and usually when you're playing, you'll have the one person that like, oh, you get the whole group of people that are like, my character's a tough guy. I play as a tough guy. You're like, okay, and then they talk trash to you, and you're like, all right, let's fight. And then you beat them, and they're like, well, your character's unfair. And I'm like, well, yeah, he's really good at one-on-one combat, but I'm playing as the happy-go-lucky person. You're playing as someone with no personality. So
That's cold in a D&D game.
it is, but it's true.
Cardinal sin.
By Skandle.
I think we're all in agreement that clerics are great. Like they're my go-to no matter what. This game that I'm about to hopefully get to play with Sean and his roommate back there is I'm going to play a cleric, a drow cleric, of course, because it's got to be a drow.
Of course.
So what's great about that is we were talking about all this stuff, and allows me to be fully rested, only 4 hours of sleep instead of 8. So
It's called crack.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, like
youth revealed.
there's so many like cool things you can do with the cleric, and even if you're like a specific type of cleric, it doesn't mean that you can't go in a different direction. It's pretty open.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go on a thing with clerics because we've already talked about them. So I'm gonna take I'm a big fan of rangers, like
That's
druids, like druids and rangers. Like those are the rangers I'm talking about. Like
Drow.
the
Drow
it doesn't have to
Ranger.
be drow. Although having a lot of decks and using a bow would probably be really really good. Anyway, I like the rangers. I like the different specs. Now again, I'm gonna go back to Dark Mists. They had 3 specific ones you could do. Beastmaster, which is pretty self-explanatory. That was always fun. Then you had the hunter, which made traps and was able to like make its own rapiers and stuff like that. Like it was, um, and then what was the last one? It wasn't barbarian. It was dang it, now I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, they were like full on damage. Like they two-hand wielded and use pugil. Anyway, so I liked rangers. I liked the self sustain you had as well, like your wizard with the heals. Having a ranger that can use medicine or whatever is always good.
In
I don't know, man.
in Pathfinder, like when you play Rangers, you pretty much have to choose like how are you going to spec them. So you're either going to go like the animal companion route, or you're going to go the favored enemy route. So like either you really like your pet hawk or eagle or octopus or whatever you decide, which you can listen.
Hunter.
They listen in the expanded rules. They put all those sea critters in there, and one of the kids came to the table. He's like, "I'm gonna be a ranger with favorite animal, and it's gonna be shark." And I'm like, "There's no water in the can. Like we didn't put water in." He's like, "Well, you're gonna put it in there now because my favorite animal is a shark." I was like, "Wait, we gonna bring a puddle with you everywhere you go?" I was like, "What is this, Waterworld the game?" He's like,
"No, it's like Free Willy. He's got it in a truck."
Yeah, it's just wet. It's just wet back there.
Just
like,
spraying.
Yeah.
Just spraying.
What is your shark doing? Nothing until someone gets in that tank. Then it's on.
He's doing his best.
I use throw and hope that I have accuracy enough to get it in that tank.
So like, I guess there's either that or you go the favorite enemy, and like the favorite enemy, like your ranger gets really
also
pumped.
Sharks.
I have a ranger who is a friend of sharks and one who hates them. So, like it that I think rangers are fun. They get a lot of people play rangers when they're unsure of like what they're gonna play. They're like, I'll play a ranger because you can do so much with them. They're just really neat. So speaking of like stuff that happens in D&D, puzzles. So. You guys have any puzzles that you remember that are like above or you will always enjoy? And I know you may not have played enough of like the paper to know any puzzles that are there, but did Shadowmoor stuff have puzzles that were kind of... Do you remember one being better than the rest? I can start.
Dark Mist?
Oh, Dark Mist. I'm sorry, I said Shadowmoor. Dark Mist.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I just didn't know what you were talking about for a second.
Yeah. So like I can start. So I remember I gave my I like to do in almost all my D&D games, I like to make these towers. And the towers are a mix between like combat and puzzles. And as you go up the tower, they get harder and harder and harder. And like one of the intro level puzzles I always like to do is it's a simple puzzle. And what it does is there are 4 pillars in the room. And the one puzzle says Yidris, and it's like Marsa, Calanfi, Ante. And they're on there, and they all have a feat plate below them. And then in the middle of the room, it'll say something like, "Young man, seek, you will find the answer to the riddle in time." And that's pretty much all I give them. There's more to it. I give them a little more than that, but I don't have the puzzle necessarily in front of me. And then I just sat them there in front of it, and I'm like, do what you got to do. And they'll start doing things like weird stuff, and they're like, okay, I stand in front of the puzzle. And I'm like, or stand in front of the pillar that has the thing on it. I'm like, okay, cool. So you stand in front of it, the pillar starts to glow. Like, oh, well, this means so everybody stands in front of something, but nothing's happening. And they're like, so they'll do that for a little bit, and they'll get on in different orders. And then finally, someone will be like, okay, read me what the book says again. And I'll be like, "Young man, seeking you will find."
They have to do the YMCA.
They have to do the YMCA. And their characters have to do it in order. YMCA. All the way around. And then the puzzle, the door opens and they get to leave the room. It's amazing. And they always...
You're a forever DM, but I would never have invited you back.
I haven't had a single time where I've done that puzzle and they haven't been like, oh, that was really good. That was really good. Because in the book, basically, the thing that's telling them the puzzle, I'll fill it full of lyrics to the song YMCA. And I'll read it to them, and they'll just be like, that's weird. And they're like, it doesn't say anything else. I'm like, no. And then usually while they're trying to figure it out, I'll, get something to drink. I'll just stand across the room, not laugh. Then they'll figure it out. No, it's always like, oh, he did. So you can use that, Sean. It's a pretty good one.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll get right on that.
If I play in that game, I'll pretend like I'm an idiot. Well, I guess I don't have to pretend very much, but
I'll just make it a different song. Everyone has to do Gangnam Style.
Oh, I don't even know how to do that dance. I guess I'm going to learn today, huh?
Yeah, you are. What about you guys? Is there any puzzles, maybe in D&D or even maybe outside D&D, that you specifically remember that you're like, oh, this is a good puzzle?
I think my best iteration with puzzles was I was in a one shot, and anytime you would open like a locked box, like a treasure box, it was like a verbal puzzle, like pretty much like a riddle, and you would be like, here's
Doggy.
your ability to solve it.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Look at that heckin' woofer.
I apologize. I have 80. Shiny. Something moved.
How do you get through anything? You see shiny every single podcast.
You're right. You're right.
Right, yeah.
Squirrel.
Yeah. So, like, it basically was just a word puzzle, and you would have to figure them out?
Yeah. It was kind of like just throwing a little bit of flavor on top of making like this is just, roll a dice, open a box. He liked to make them word puzzles. Just add a little depth. It didn't always make sense unless the combination was the answer to the riddle, which is how he usually did it, but it was a good time.
There's a lot into that. Did you get any kind of experience with puzzles?
I did, but it wasn't in Dark Mist. We talked about this in a previous podcast. I really, really enjoyed that fight in Ocarina of Time when you had to fight yourself. Like
Okay, yeah.
It wasn't really like an extremely difficult puzzle, but when you first go in there and you go to fight it and you swing and it's like tink and you bounce off, right? Like it was till and even whenever you knew how to do it, sometimes you would do it wrong and he would block one of your attacks or whatever and mirror it. But like uh I know it sounds stupid, I know it sounds simple, but that's such a memorable fight
Oh,
for
yeah.
me. Like I really enjoyed that, learning how to overcome that one. I don't know. Maybe that's too
No, that's
simple.
no.
But
That works.
Yeah, it's a good puzzle. I mean, a lot of the video games, and that's what draws me into like a lot of the role playing games, is that it does have that puzzles. And honestly, I know I talked about this. I don't think it was on this podcast, but I talked about like why I enjoy shooter video games.
Mhm.
It's because it's a puzzle, but it's an ever-evolving puzzle. Like they can't program the difficulty of this puzzle, and that's how I look at it. And people are like, that's a different way to look at it, but that's what it is. It's a puzzle. It's your brain and ability versus someone else's brain and ability, and can you come out on top? Can you win? So,
God, I wish I could tell you about XCOM right now. You want to know about that? It's a shooter puzzle game.
Oh yeah.
It's like turn-based combat.
Yeah, I've watched people play it. XCOM turn-based, like it's like you control a squad and move them around, and it's good. Good game. So, my last thing. So the last thing, items. They're an item from the D&D universe that you specifically remember.
I can attribute this back to Dark Mist. My favorite staff that I ever wielded was a staff named Zargnil, and it was a sharp staff, but it did like a rare had like a type, like a rare type. So whenever it attacked, it was its digestion. So your digestion wounds or massacres or whatever, like it was. So the staff was Zargnil. There wasn't anything special in it other than it. That was like the first exotic weapon I had that uh had a different like noun that wasn't like slash or smash or whatever.
Digestion.
Like it was so it's not even that great near the end of DM's run, but yeah, it was that's probably my favorite one from there. Yeah.
I gave my players, so I like to give them powerful items that aren't necessarily obvious how they're useful. And I always like to throw in useless items as well. So in a box, there was 3 things in the box. There was there was the belt of string. So the belt could produce unlimited amount of string. 60 minutes. That's just what it did.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
it. Then there was the rock of detect gravity. So that's always a good one. You always give them that. And they're like, well, how does this work? I'm like, okay, you hold your hand out and you drop the rock. If it drops, gravity's working. And then the last one was it looked like a music box. And the music box had 2 thumbprints on the side that have a little like dagger sticking out of the thumbprint. So it looks, if you put your finger on it, it would do the thing. Well, in D&D, before you use a magical item, you have to figure out how it works, or what it is. And none of them had the ability to discern magical device or anything. So one of the guys, like, he looks at me and he's like, He's like, I think I'm going to put the thumbs where the thing goes. And he could read from my face that is probably not the right answer. Because I literally went like this. I was like, he's like, wait, I don't do that. I was like, okay. So they bring it back to town, and they, take it to the guy who works at the little shop where they get magic stuff. And he's like, oh, this is a very powerful ancient artifact. It's called the Song of Extinction. And they're like, oh, well, what does that do? So what it is you put your thumb on it, and the person who puts their thumb on it, their soul is now bound to the box. Oh. And the box opens up a hole in the earth 60 foot wide. And everything within the 60-foot radius dies. Because it's literal, and it's a really powerful artifact. But I'm like, well, you could have. We would have just started over from the beginning, I guess. You would have wiped your whole party. But they're like, well, why would you give us something like this? I'm like, well, I mean, it's a fun item. One of you wants to die to use it. That's fine by me.
I like how your response to him wanting to do it was...
Because everybody was standing right next to him. I was like, and his whole party, because he's a very rash player. He's the one that's always getting hurt in the traps. Because they're like, okay, you see a door in front of you. He's like,
I handed Pandora's box to Pandora.
I didn't.
It was
they gave it to him. They gave it to him. His group was like, he can have the box. I was like, oh, that is a bad idea. But okay. And he got hurt. So the very first time I sent him to a dungeon, because I always like to do dungeons that are themed to the holidays. So we get one for Christmas and you get one for Halloween, and then every once in a while we'll do an Arbor Day one or something like that. But they go to this haunted mansion on Halloween, and I'm like, they get inside, there's a door. I'm like, the door seems very heavy to push, and he's like, I'm gonna kick the door in. You're gonna kick the door in? He said, yes. So the door was on basically a pulley system, and up above him, there's a log. I was like, okay, roll for how hard you kick it. And he rolled. He was like, I rolled a 13. And I was like, okay. You kick the door, and it goes flying off his hinges. At the same force, the log that's attached to the door through the string and pulley comes and hits you right in the back. He's like, so how much damage do I take? I said, well, 13. You kicked the door with the 13 damage there. So, some characters just like to die, I guess. I don't know. He's still alive, miraculously.
Yeah. Good lord.
Yeah.
Good for him.
He rolls lucky when he needs it, I guess.
Hey, I think the next time we have a session, Shiny DM, these sound like some fun adventures, man. I'm not clowning on your boy. I'm sure he does good ones as well. I'm just saying that.
As soon as I hear young man, I'm like,
yo, I gave these fools so there's a very simple D&D puzzle where you have a pedestal in the middle of a room, and you give them enough rope. It's a big circular room. You give them enough rope to go from wall to wall. And what they have to do is they have to literally take the rope and slide the pedestal off. Get their whole party on each side of the rope, and then use strength checks to pull it off. So I gave them the rope. I gave the stool in the middle of the room. There's lava around it. And I'm like, what do you guys do with the rope? And they're like, we're going to try to shoot it at the pillar with the bow and arrow. And I was like, okay, fair enough. Right into the lava. And we spent about 20 minutes after that figuring out how they were going to get that pedestal off of there. And I wasn't going to help them, and they wasted a lot of resources doing it, but it was just so great to watch.
That must be the fun side of being a DM.
It is, because you're You're like, I know that was the wrong answer. Let's see what happens. How are they going to convince me that this works now? And one of them had like a feather of flight. There's like a very cheap item. It's a feather that gives you an hour of fly time, and you can fly it at base movement speed, basically. And he used the feather to like get up on top of it, and then with the remaining rope, he tied around it, and then brought the rope back to them, and then they, pulled it off. It was pretty. I was like, okay, that works for me. But puzzles are like one of the funnest parts of being a DM, because the puzzles, when you're making them, they're very intricate, but it's simple once you understand the design. And just watching them have to like, okay, if I do this does right. If I do this, it does wrong. That's pretty enjoyable usually. And when they get it, it's always a good time, because they're like, oh, that's cool. Anthony's not exactly that smart. We just aren't good at problem solving.
I actually did remember one puzzle that I also wanted to point out, where there was a long stretch of hallway, a locked door behind us, magically locked. And it was about, let's say, 50 feet between a dark corridor, like a dark turn. And we walked 25 feet out, and 2 gelatinous cubes fell down that take up the width of the hallway. So the correct answer is to focus one, or have like some way of, there's no way to get around it. You have to focus the one that's in front of you so you can get to that corridor. And my solution was I Misty Step right behind it and then ran. Because that is the only way that I ever do puzzles, is I'm looking out for numero uno.
Yeah, gotta get out. I get that.
Yeah.
Have
Good to know.
one time, so my very first time DM, I felt kind of bad about it. I like to make weapons and put them in my games to give the characters power more close to what people who don't always play D&D would like. Because if you don't play D&D all the time, your goal is to make your characters like your heroes, like the people you play in video games, the people you watch in anime, stuff like that. So I like to give them items that closely attune to that. And there was a kid that was playing, and he wanted to be like this really awesome archer. So I gave him this quiver, and it would produce different types of arrows based upon how they rolled the die. There was one arrow that was a particular problem. Damn portal arrow. So basically, it would create a 10-foot portal, and then would teleport whatever's in that portal to wherever you shot the other arrow, which was also a 10-foot thing. I had them fighting this wolf in this basement, and they portal arrowed that damn thing right into like this pit of spikes. And they're like, "Is it dead?" I was like, "No, it's down there, but it can't get out." So I was like, "Fair enough, you guys beat it."
That's fun with portals, I'll say.
Yeah. And for the rest of the rest of that campaign, every time they were just like, what we use right now? A portal arrow. And I'm like, "What are you even gonna do with it?" And they're like, "Everything." They freaking portal arrowed this guy. They're like, "All right, you're gonna go fight the big bad guy, but we're gonna surprise him." So they portal arrowed him, and he literally was like right in front of the dude, and like popped out in front of the dude that they portaled from, just sliced the dude that portaled in front of him in half. And they're like, "Oh, that was a bad idea." I was like, probably. Yeah, that's pretty much what I got on the, like, just some of the goofy things that have happened. I mean, I got a bunch of stories here and everything, but we can go over those in time.
Yeah, I think we should definitely do another D&D story time.
Yeah, maybe we can get some of the people that were a part of it. That'd be a fun one as well. All right, so, Crash, you want to take us home?
This has been the Nerdlore Podcast. Thanks for watching.